Hello everyone, I am Amin. Welcome to BYK Book Summary. Here we decide the mindset and story of the world's most successful icon and the most powerful books that saved them. Our mission is to bring you deep insight, your personal growth, joining me to simplify this concept is my AI research co-host. Let's dive into today's journey of knowledge.
In 1988, a book was published that would eventually go on to sell over 65 million copies worldwide.
Yeah, which is just a staggering number.
Right. I mean, it's been translated into more than 80 languages, and it actually holds a Guinness World Record.
It does.
But, and here's the crazy part, the very first print run of this book was exactly 900 copies.
Takes 900.
And they barely sold at all. I mean, the publisher explicitly told the author there was zero market for this kind of story, and they just outright canceled his contract.
Basically told him to give up.
Exactly. So, welcome to today's deep dive. If you're joining us right now, we are looking at a stack of sources, biographies, archival interviews, extensive literary analyses, all surrounding Paulo Coelho's defining work, The Alchemist. And we're looking at a trajectory that really defies every single conventional rule of publishing and success.
It is the absolute definition of a paradoxical start. And that paradox is exactly why we are not just doing a simple plot summary of a famous novel today.
Wait, that's not what we're about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Based on all the biographical and analytical texts we've gathered, our mission today is to extract the actual psychological framework buried inside this story.
Yeah.
We're going to dissect this paralyzing fear of failure. We're going to debate the intense philosophical tension between destiny, what the text calls maktub, and personal agency.
Which is a huge debate.
It really is.
Yeah.
And most importantly, we're going to translate all of these seemingly mystical concepts into highly practical frameworks for you, the listener. For modern dreamers, creators, and entrepreneurs who are just trying to navigate their own overwhelming ambitions.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because looking through these biographies, it becomes immediately apparent that we absolutely cannot understand the message of this book without understanding the man who literally had to survive its lessons first.
Right. His life is the blueprint.
Exactly. Paulo Coelho's real-life backstory isn't just, fun trivia. It is the foundational architecture of the philosophy he eventually wrote about. So, he was born in Rio de Janeiro in 1947, and right from childhood, he had this singular, unshakable dream. He wanted to be a writer.
A classic ambition, right?
Right.
But when we examine the historical and cultural context of mid-century Brazil,
Yeah, totally different world.
right, particularly within a traditional middle-class family, we see how dangerous that ambition was perceived to be.
Dangerous is a good word for it.
Because his parents were entirely convinced that his dream of being a writer was not just deeply impractical, but so completely detached from reality that it constituted a psychological breakdown.
Wow.
Yeah, they didn't just suggest a backup plan like, hey, go into accounting or law.
Right, like most parents would.
Exactly. They actually had him committed to a psychiatric facility.
Wait, they committed him?
Yes. And not just once. 3 separate times between the ages of 17 and 20.
The cruelty of that is almost hard to process.
It is.
I mean, you look at modern equivalents where maybe a parent pressures a kid into a STEM field instead of the arts, and, that causes friction.
Sure, normal family tension.
But institutionalization, that is a total erasure of a person's agency. It forces us to ask how someone even survives that kind of systemic invalidation.
Right.
The universe wasn't just failing to support his dream, it was actively using the people he trusted most to pathologize his mind.
What's fascinating here is how this extreme real-world adversity authenticates the entire philosophy of his future work.
Oh, absolutely.
When you read The Alchemist, and it talks about pushing past monumental obstacles to pursue your dream, this advice is not coming from theoretical academia
No.
or a place of untested privilege. Think about the profound psychological resilience required to hold on to your ambition, what he later terms your personal legend, when your closest support systems are using medical institutions to tell you your ambition is a literal symptom of insanity.
That's incredibly heavy.
He had to develop an internal validation system that was entirely, completely bulletproof against external reality.
So he essentially builds a psychological immune system.
Basically, yeah.
He has to learn to trust his own internal compass over the officially diagnosed reality of the doctors and his parents.
Right.
And that internal compass eventually points him, in 1987, to walk the road to Santiago de Compostela in Spain, which is this massive, grueling spiritual pilgrimage.
It's intense.
Yeah, the analyses we read highlight this as the crucible moment, because the sheer physical exhaustion of a pilgrimage breaks down the ego. It strips away all the daily distractions and forces a confrontation with whatever is left underneath.
And for Coelho, what was left was that undeniable compulsion to write.
Exactly. He finishes the pilgrimage, sits down, and writes The Alchemist in just 2 weeks.
That's 2 weeks, which, you know, that speed of composition is indicative of a dam break.
Oh, for sure.
The story had already been forged over decades of suppression and survival.
Yeah.
It merely required a conduit to get it onto paper.
Right.
But as you mentioned at the start of our deep dive, the friction didn't end with the completion of the manuscript.
No, not at all.
He gets a publisher, he secures that initial validation, and then the market delivers a crushing silence.
Those 900 copies.
Yeah, the 900 copies just languish.
Yeah.
And the contract is terminated.
I always look at that 900 copy failure through the lens of like a modern startup founder.
Okay.
You spend years developing the internal fortitude to pitch your vision. You finally get a seed investor. You build the product, you launch the app, and the analytics just come back flat.
Zero user adoption.
Right, exactly. Your seed investors look at the dismal metrics, pull their funding, and completely drop you.
It's devastating.
The market hasn't just said, not right now, it has said never. But instead of folding, Coelho pivots. He takes back the rights to his own book, refuses to accept the market's initial diagnosis.
Just like he refused his parents' psychiatric diagnosis.
Exactly. He finds a second publisher, and within months it becomes a bestseller, eventually hitting that 65 million mark. It's the literal equivalent of finding a new backer and hitting unicorn status in a quarter.
The turnaround is whiplash-inducing. But it requires a very specific interpretive lens on the part of the creator.
What do you mean?
Well, if he had viewed the initial failure as a definitive judgment on the quality of his work, he would have stopped.
Right, he would have accepted it.
Instead, he viewed it as an environmental variable that needed to be changed. He changed publishers, he changed the environment, not the core product.
That dynamic actually brings up a major tension in the source material.
Oh, yeah.
Because the most famous line in The Alchemist is that when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it.
Right. Everyone quotes that.
They do. But if I track Coelho's life, you know, the asylums, the decades of delay, the brutally canceled first contract, that doesn't look like a conspiracy of help.
Not at all.
That looks like a conspiracy of resistance. I mean, the universe seems to be acting as his primary antagonist, throwing up every possible roadblock to stop him from becoming a writer.
That tension is the central paradox of the whole philosophy. And it requires us to redefine what help actually means in this context.
Okay.
The universe's conspiracy to help you is rarely a frictionless red carpet. The psychiatric wards, the canceled contracts, these weren't the universe trying to stop him.
And what were they?
They were the precise crucible required to forge the kind of writer who could produce a narrative resonant enough to reach tens of millions of people.
Oh, wow.
If Coelho had easily published a book at age 20, fully supported by his parents, he would not have possessed the profound psychological weight, the understanding of deep suffering, or the empathy for the marginalized that permeates his work.
That makes a lot of sense.
The resistance gave him the substance. The obstacles were the curriculum.
The adversity was the necessary ingredient for the final product. So the resistance builds the muscle required to carry the eventual weight of the success.
Yeah.
That reframe changes everything about how we view setbacks. Which brings us from Coelho's real-life struggle directly into the fictional avatar he created to explain this exact survival mechanism to the world.
Right. A young Andalusian character named Santiago.
Santiago serves as the perfect vessel because his initial state of being is one of comfortable inertia, which perfectly mirrors the state most people find themselves in before a major life disruption.
Yeah, that comfort zone.
Right. The text introduces us to Santiago as a shepherd traveling across Europe. He has his flock, he has a routine, he knows the land, and he knows exactly how to survive. It is a very safe, contained existence.
Very predictable.
But the disruption comes in the form of a recurring dream. He keeps dreaming about this massive treasure buried far away near the Egyptian pyramids. Eventually, he crosses paths with an old man who identifies himself as the king of Salem. And this king introduces Santiago to the foundational concept of the text, which is the personal legend. He defines it as the one specific pursuit that gives a person's life actual meaning and purpose. And this is the exact moment the king delivers that famous promise about the universe conspiring to help you.
But there's a catch.
Right, a huge catch. To test this promise, Santiago has to do something incredibly drastic. He has to sell his entire flock of sheep to fund his journey to Egypt.
The act of selling the sheep is the narrative's most critical early metaphor, and we really have to dissect its psychological weight.
Let's do it. What do the sheep represent?
On the surface, obviously they represent Santiago's livelihood. But psychologically, the flock represents predictability. It represents the known world and the comfort of societal expectations.
Yeah.
Sheep require constant routine care. They keep your eyes on the ground, making sure they have water and grass. They literally prevent you from looking at the horizon.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. So to pursue the recurring dream, he has to willingly liquidate his safety net. You cannot hunt for treasure in Egypt while safely tending your flock in Spain. The physics of the journey demand an absolute sacrifice of comfort.
Precisely. And this is where so many people stall on their own lives. They experience that quiet certainty of a recurring dream, a business idea, a career shift, a creative pursuit. But they try to negotiate with the universe.
They want the best of both worlds.
Right. They want to keep the sheep and find the treasure simultaneously. The text argues that this is fundamentally impossible.
It just doesn't work.
No. The universe requires a demonstration of commitment. It needs an irreversible action that proves you're willing to trade the comfort of the known for the possibility of the unknown.
So what does this all mean in a practical sense? Because when I look at this interaction, I notice that the King of Salem acts merely as a catalyst. He provides the vocabulary, he names the personal legend, and he provides the initial spark of belief. But the king doesn't buy Santiago's tickets to Africa.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't go to the market and negotiate the sale of the sheep. Santiago still has to be the one to execute the terrifying, irreversible action.
Right, he has to do the hard part.
Exactly. Having the dream is passive. Liquidating the safety net is active. It tells us that the universe does not respond to the static nature of our desires. It only responds to the momentum of our actions.
That momentum is the trigger. And once Santiago sells the sheep and takes a ship to Africa, he initiates the next major psychological framework the book offers.
Which is?
Well, it's a masterclass in managing the expectations of a journey. Because human nature dictates that once we make a massive, terrifying sacrifice, we expect immediate positive reinforcement.
Oh, totally. You quit the corporate job to start your own agency, and you subconsciously expect clients to just start lining up at your door because you were, quote-unquote, brave.
Goodness.
You took the leap, so where's the safety net catching you? But the reality of Santiago's journey introduces us to two distinct, highly volatile phases. The first is what the book explicitly calls beginner's luck.
The beginner's luck is such a fascinating phenomenon. It is the period where, immediately upon starting the pursuit of the personal legend, things seem inexplicably easy.
Yeah, doors open.
Right, small victories are achieved with very minimal effort.
But the text reveals this is actually a trap. It's a complete illusion. The ease isn't permanent. It's just a mechanism to draw you further down the path.
It's bait.
It is bait.
Yeah.
Because what inevitably follows beginner's luck is the second, brutal phase, the test of the universe.
And that's where things get real.
This is where the initial momentum crashes into severe, almost insurmountable difficulty. The rule of this framework is absolute. Those who stop when the difficulty hits fail the test. Those who push through discover what lies on the other side. And the author does not spare Santiago here. He arrives in Tangier, and almost immediately he is completely robbed of all the money he made from selling his sheep.
At free last.
He is stranded in a foreign country, he doesn't speak the language, and he is forced to take a menial job cleaning glass for a local crystal merchant just to avoid starvation.
Let's map this framework to modern endeavors, because the psychological accuracy here is really striking.
Yep, please do.
The initial excitement of a new project, those early small wins, that is beginner's luck. Psychologically, it serves as bait. The universe, or your own neurobiology, gives you just enough positive reinforcement dopamine
No.
to make you deeply commit.
Just enough to get you hooked.
Exactly. But then, the novelty wears off, the initial capital runs out, and the friction of reality sets in. This is the test phase, and this is where the attrition rate of human ambition absolutely skyrockets.
It's the free sample versus the full price.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. Think about the first week of a radical new health protocol. You change your diet, you start working out, and by day 5, you've dropped some water weight, you feel this surge of synthetic energy, and you think, this is incredibly easy, I've mastered my biology.
Right, the honeymoon phase.
That's the free sample. The universe hooked you. But then week 4 arrives. The scale hasn't moved in 10 days, your joints ache, your willpower is depleted, and the friction of maintaining the discipline feels completely suffocating.
Yeah, that's when it gets hard.
That is the universe handing you the bill for the full price of the transformation.
And how you respond to that bill determines the outcome. The crucial analytical point here is understanding why the author puts Santiago in the crystal shop.
Okay, why crystal?
Working for the crystal merchant isn't a detour from his personal legend, it is the core curriculum. Crystal represents clarity, but also extreme fragility.
Oh, interesting.
Santiago spends a year meticulously cleaning fragile objects, which metaphorically represent him cleaning his own perception, learning patience, and understanding the delicate nature of his own ambition.
And the merchant himself is such a vital character in this analysis. He serves as a dark mirror for Santiago.
He really does.
Because the merchant has his own personal legend, right? He dreams of going on a pilgrimage to Mecca, but he refuses to go.
Right, he just stays in the shop.
He tells Santiago that the dream of Mecca is the only thing that keeps him alive, and he is absolutely terrified that if he actually goes and achieves it, he will have nothing left to live for.
The merchant embodies the tragedy of the unlived life. He prefers the psychological safety of a fantasy over the messy, unpredictable reality of actualization.
Wow.
He is the physical manifestation of what happens when you fail the test. Test of the universe. You retreat to a comfortable routine and let the dream calcify into a mere coping mechanism.
That is deeply depressing.
It is. By working for him, Santiago gets to see the exact future that awaits him if he gives up. The test isn't just about earning his money back, it's about looking at the merchant and deciding, I will not become this.
So you're saying the test is an external tax on our resources, designed to force us into a state of growth, while the wrong path is an internal drain on our drive.
Exactly.
That entirely changes how a founder should look at a failing startup, or how an artist should look at a rejection letter. It begs a really specific question, though.
Is that?
If someone listening is deep in the trenches of their own Tangier, you know, they feel stranded, they are metaphorically cleaning crystal just to survive, and it feels endlessly part of heart, how do we differentiate between a test of the universe that requires resilience and a genuine, blazing red flag that we are simply on the wrong path entirely?
That is the pivotal diagnostic question.
Yeah.
And the distinction lies in the nature of the friction.
Okay, unpack that.
Remember that the personal legend is defined by a quiet, intrinsic certainty. A test of the universe typically attacks your external resources, your funding, your social support, your current strategy.
It pushes back on your methods.
Right. It forces you to adapt, to innovate, and to grow stronger in order to proceed. It is external friction. Santiago lost his money, but he never lost the desire to reach Egypt.
Ah, I see.
However, if you realize that the desire itself has evaporated, or if you discover that the goal you were pursuing was actually someone else's dream, perhaps your parents' expectation of prestige or society's definition of wealth, that is a sign you are on the wrong path.
So the motivation is the key.
Exactly. The test challenges your resolve. The wrong path drains your authentic desire.
The test challenges the resolve. The wrong path drains the desire. I love that. If you still want the core outcome despite the misery of the current process, you're in a test.
Right.
If the outcome itself suddenly feels hollow, you're on the wrong path. That makes perfect sense. So, Santiago passes the test, he earns enough money, he leaves the crystal shop, and he joins a caravan to cross the Sahara Desert to finally reach Egypt.
Yes.
But the text pivots here. We move from external friction robbers and menial labor to something much more insidious. The true battleground becomes entirely internal.
Yes, it does. The physical environment of the Sahara Desert is deliberately chosen by the author to amplify this internal shift.
Why a desert?
Because a desert is vast, isolating, and indifferent. It removes all external stimulation. You cannot distract yourself in the deep desert.
True, there's nothing out there.
You are forced into absolute presence, which means you are forced to listen to your own mind.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because in the silence of the desert, Santiago meets the actual alchemist who becomes his final mentor. And the alchemist introduces what is arguably the most psychologically penetrating concept in the entire source material. Your own heart is your greatest obstacle.
It's a profound realization.
The alchemist explains that when you want something with absolute desperation, the heart becomes intensely afraid. And it's afraid of three specific things: failure, loss, and disappointment.
Right.
This fear is identified not just as a hurdle, but as the only true barrier standing between a person and their personal legend.
Let's dive deep into the neurobiology and psychology of self-sabotage here. Why does the human heart, or the ego, fear the very thing it desires most?
Yeah, on the surface that seems contradictory.
It does. But it makes perfect evolutionary and psychological sense when you realize that deep, authentic desire creates profound vulnerability.
Okay, how so?
If you do not care about an outcome, you have absolute psychological armor. You have nothing to lose.
Right, if you don't care, you can't be hurt.
But the moment you define your personal legend, the moment you articulate, this specific achievement is what will give my life meaning, you have suddenly engineered a scenario where failure would be catastrophic to your identity.
You are raising the stakes on yourself to a terrifying degree.
Exactly.
As long as you are just casually interested in something, failure is just a data point. But if you declare it as your life's purpose, failure is an indictment of your worth.
Exactly. You are raising the psychological stakes to the absolute maximum. Examine the specific fears the alchemist lists: failure, loss, disappointment.
Notice what's missing from that list.
Right, the deliberate exclusion of physical danger. The desert caravan faces literal death from tribal wars, bandits, and dehydration.
But the heart doesn't care about that.
No, the heart isn't primarily afraid of the bandits. It is afraid of ego death.
Wow.
It is afraid of trying its absolute hardest, expending every ounce of energy and capital, and still falling short. That realization, the undeniable proof of "I simply wasn't good enough," is often more terrifying to the human ego than physical hardship.
I want you, the listener, to really internalize this concept because it is so incredibly ironic. We spend our entire lives externalizing our obstacles.
We constantly look for things outside of us to blame.
We do. We build narratives that say, if I just had more venture capital, or if I had a better network, or if the macroeconomic conditions were better, then I could achieve my dream.
We blame the robbers in Tangier.
Exactly. But the text is fiercely arguing that the fear of not getting the treasure is the exact mechanism that prevents us from getting it.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
We are so terrified of the devastating disappointment of a final, unarguable failure that we subconsciously sabotage the journey early on just to avoid finding out the truth about our own capabilities. We prefer the safety of, I could have done it if I had the money, over the brutal reality of trying and failing.
It is the ultimate protective mechanism of the psyche. The heart whispers, if we stop now, if we just stay at the crystal shop, we can preserve the illusion of our potential forever.
That is so insidious.
Overcoming that specific fear, convincing your own ego to risk the utter devastation of disappointment, is the final, most impenetrable barrier to the personal legend.
Okay, this brings us to a massive philosophical collision in the text.
Let's hear it.
If our internal fears of disappointment and these brutal external tests are the things dictating our success or failure, how on earth does that square with the book's foundational recurring concept of predestination?
Yes.
Because the narrative introduces a concept that seems to completely contradict the idea of free will and personal struggle.
You are identifying the grand debate of the narrative, which mirrors one of the oldest debates in human philosophy, the tension between determinism and free will.
The text continually uses this Arabic word, maktub, which translates to "it is written."
Right.
Coelho explicitly suggests throughout the story that certain things are predetermined by the universe, that your destiny, your treasure, is already inked into the cosmic fabric.
He does.
But then he attaches this massive, paradoxical caveat. Your job is to move toward your destiny, because it will not come to you while you sit still.
This raises an important question. If a reality is truly written, why must there be such intense, agonizing struggle to achieve it?
Exactly.
If the universe has already decided that Santiago will find his treasure, or that Coelho will sell 65 million books, why the robbers? Why the psychiatric wards? Why the agonizing fear of failure?
Right. If the universe already wrote the script, why do I have to act so hard? If the ending is guaranteed, I shouldn't have to suffer through the middle.
The way to reconcile this contradiction and what the author is driving at is a form of philosophical compatibilism.
Meaning what, exactly?
The destination may be Maktub. The peak of the mountain is fixed in its geographical location.
Okay.
But the velocity of your ascent, the specific route you navigate, how long you spend complaining about the cold, and whether you choose to set up a tent halfway up and never leave, that is entirely governed by your personal agency.
Oh, I like that visual.
Destiny is not an autonomous vehicle that chauffeurs you to success while you sleep in the back seat. It is a coordinate on a map. It is written that the coordinate exists. It's up to you to walk there.
I hear the elegance of that metaphor, but let me push back a bit because I think a lot of practical-minded people struggle here.
Sure, push back.
If I decide to surrender to apathy, sit on my couch all day, and do absolutely nothing, the concept of it is written means nothing to my lived experience.
Right? Nothing happens.
I will never reach the pyramids. I will never write the book. So isn't the entire concept of Maktub just a very clever psychological comfort blanket?
That's a fair question.
Isn't it just a mental trick a person plays on themselves to tolerate the immense pain of the journey, rather than a literal mystical pre-programming of the cosmos?
That is a sharp and highly valid critique. Are we dealing with literal cosmic mysticism, or are we looking at a highly evolved psychological utility?
Right.
Let's analyze the operational utility of that comfort blanket. Consider what happens to the human psyche when disaster strikes.
Like getting robbed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When Santiago is robbed of everything in Tangier, or when Coelho's first book contract is canceled. If you operate under a purely nihilistic or chaotic framework where there is no destiny, then getting robbed is just a random, senseless act of cruelty in an indifferent universe.
And that's a hard pill to swallow.
It is. That interpretation breeds immediate bitterness, victimhood, and despair. It logically dictates that you should quit because the game is rigged and chaotic.
The chaos makes the suffering meaningless.
Exactly. But if you adopt the framework of Maktub, the entire nature of the trauma is reframed. Getting robbed is suddenly stripped of its random cruelty.
Oh, so?
It becomes a necessary pre-written chapter in the architecture of your ultimate success. It forces the mind to ask a productive question. Why did I need to lose my money here to become the person capable of reaching the treasure?
Ah, I see. It changes the narrative from why is this happening to me to what is this preparing me for?
Precisely. And that cognitive reframing is immensely powerful. It allows a person to maintain forward momentum through catastrophic, emotionally devastating setbacks.
That's a huge shift.
Whether Maktub is a literal reality of the universe or simply a psychological coping mechanism engineered by the brain, the operational result is entirely identical. It manufactures unbreakable resilience.
Wow.
It allows Coelho to look at a canceled publishing contract and genuinely believe this is merely the required friction of the path instead of concluding this is the definitive end of my career.
That is a profound distinction. Maktub acts as an operating system for resilience.
That's a great way to put it.
If you genuinely believe the ending is written and that the ending is ultimate actualization, then whatever terrible, painful chapter you are currently surviving is just rising action.
Yes.
It guarantees that the current suffering is not the finale, which naturally leads us to ask, how do we install this operating system?
Right, getting to the practical steps.
We have been swimming in some incredibly deep, heavy philosophical waters: ego death, the illusion of safety, the tension between determinism and free will. But I want to make sure you, the listener, can walk away with an actionable framework.
Absolutely.
How do we practice this kind of actionable mysticism in a modern, hyper-distracted world?
The source material actually provides a clear underlying methodology for this, and it centers around what the author terms the soul of the world.
Right. Throughout the narrative, Coelho introduces the idea that the universe operates on a shared underlying language. The soul of the world doesn't speak in English or Portuguese. It speaks through the natural environment, through visceral gut feelings, through symbols, and primarily through signs.
Yes.
The text argues that those who are actively pursuing their personal legend begin to understand this nonverbal language intuitively. They know which direction to move without needing explicit instructions.
Because the universe is constantly transmitting data. It is constantly sending what the book calls omens.
And these omens manifest as coincidences, unexpected encounters, or doors that open without any logical linear explanation.
Right.
But the book draws a very sharp, unforgiving line. People who are distracted are entirely blind to these omens.
They miss everything.
The signs are there, but the receiver is tuned to the wrong frequency. Only those who cultivate active awareness can catch them.
Exactly.
So let's extract the concrete behaviors from the text. If you want to start reading this language, if you want to invite this conspiracy of help into your own life, here is how the narrative suggests you begin. First, you have to define the excitement.
This is the critical baseline for locating your personal legend. You have to identify the one specific pursuit that genuinely excites you, and this is the vital part. It must be completely independent of other people's opinions or the potential external rewards.
That's so hard to do.
It is. It cannot be contaminated by societal expectations.
Yeah.
You cannot say, my personal legend is to be a corporate lawyer because my parents will finally respect me, or my legend is to build this tech startup because it's the fastest route to liquidity.
Right. Those are ego-driven goals.
Exactly. The legend has to be an intrinsic draw. It is that quiet, unkillable certainty we discussed earlier with Coelho's writing.
That requirement, independence from the reward, is staggeringly difficult in a culture obsessed with a visible status.
Oh, completely.
Once you find that intrinsic draw, the text shows us that you must initiate patient movement. You have to physically or intellectually walk in that direction.
Because the universe only responds to momentum.
Right. You cannot steer a parked car. You have to start walking toward your own version of the pyramids before the universe will send the alchemist to guide you. The omens do not appear to people who are standing still, waiting for permission.
And that movement must be coupled with profound patience, because as the test of the universe guarantees, the timeline for the realization of the legend is rarely the timeline the ego desires.
Which brings us to the most modern application of this text, auditing your distractions.
This is so important.
The text explicitly warns that the distracted mind misses the language of the universe. So I want to challenge you right now, wherever you are listening to this, what is the specific noise in your life that is blinding you to the omens?
Yeah, what's getting in the way?
Are you so entirely consumed by the microscopic manufactured dramas of your workplace or the endless dopamine loop of social media doom scrolling that you literally wouldn't notice a life-changing coincidence if it happened right in front of you?
Most people wouldn't.
The modern environment is weaponized to steal your attention. You have to aggressively clear the static to hear the signal.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, removing the mystical terminology for a moment, there is a profound neurobiological mechanism at play here that grounds this entire philosophy in hard science.
Oh, I love this part.
In neuroscience, there is a network of neurons in the brainstem, known as the reticular activating system, or the RAS.
This is the filter, right? The gatekeeper of the brain.
Exactly. The human brain is bombarded by billions of bits of sensory data every single second. Visuals, sounds, tactile sensations.
It's overwhelming.
If the conscious mind tried to process all of it, it would immediately short-circuit. So the RAS acts as an executive assistant. It filters out 99% of the environmental data it deems irrelevant to your survival or your stated goals.
And it only lets through what's important.
Right. It only lets through the specific information you have programmed it to care about.
So if I decide I want to buy a very specific make and model of a car, let's say a vintage cherry red convertible,
Okay.
I make that decision, and suddenly, the next day, I see 3 of those exact cars on my commute.
Yeah, happens all the time.
The universe didn't magically spawn those cars onto the highway overnight. They were always driving there. My brain was just deleting them from my conscious awareness because they weren't relevant to me yesterday.
Exactly.
But today, my RAS says, oh, red convertibles are important now. Let that data through.
That is the exact mechanism. Now apply that to the personal legend. When you deeply define your intrinsic goal, when you initiate physical movement toward it, and when you forcefully audit your digital and social distractions, you are radically reprogramming your reticular activating system.
You are literally changing your brain.
You are telling your brain's gatekeeper, this specific type of opportunity, this specific kind of person is now critical to my survival.
Wow.
So when you start cataloging anomalies, when you notice a coincidence that feels too pointed to be random, or you have an unexpected conversation that shifts your entire perspective, we have to ask a question.
Are these literal magical cosmic signs placed on your path by a mystical universe?
Or are they simply the ambient opportunities that were always present in your environment, but your newly programmed, highly tuned brain is finally allowing you to perceive them?
That is the ultimate synthesis right there. The mysticism and the neuroscience arrive at the exact same conclusion.
They really do.
Whether you view these omens through the spiritual lens of the soul of the world, or the cognitive lens of the reticular activating system, the operational result in your daily life is entirely identical. Active awareness creates luck.
It's that simple.
By ruthlessly tuning your focus and clearing your distractions, you begin to interact with your environment in a way that makes it look and feel exactly like the universe is conspiring to help you.
Active awareness creates luck. It transforms the chaotic noise of reality into a navigable map.
So we have tracked an incredible trajectory today. We started in the restrictive atmosphere of Rio de Janeiro, analyzed the trauma of psychiatric wards, traveled across the Andalusian plains with the shepherd,
Dissected the psychology of a Moroccan crystal shop.
and confronted the ego death of the Saharan desert. We have unpacked a massively dense philosophy that was brilliantly disguised as a simple fable.
It is a testament to why the book resonates across so many different cultures and languages. It addresses the universal architecture of human ambition and fear.
As we bring this deep dive to a close, I want to remind you that The Alchemist is infinitely more than a novel about a boy looking for buried gold.
So much more.
As the text itself claims, it is a conversation between your soul and the universe. And by examining Paulo Coelho's own lived experience, the brutal rejections, the agonizing decades of delay, the humiliating initial failure of 900 copies, leading eventually to 65 million sold, we see this exact blueprint at work in the real, unforgiving world.
We really do.
Find the intrinsic legend, brave the illusion of beginner's luck, endure the crucible of the universe's tests, conquer your heart's paralyzing fear of disappointment, and move relentlessly forward, cataloging the omens and programming your focus as you go.
But there's one final critical piece of the narrative architecture we haven't touched on yet.
Oh, right, the twist.
Yeah, and it fundamentally reframes the entire purpose of the journey we've just discussed. At the absolute climax of the story, after surviving the desert crossing, the tribal wars, and his own internal doubts, Santiago finally reaches the Egyptian pyramids.
The finish line.
He falls to his knees, he digs in the sand for his promised treasure, and what actually happens?
He doesn't find gold.
No, he doesn't.
He gets jumped by refugees from the tribal wars, and he is beaten and robbed again, right at the finish line.
Yes, but in the process of that brutal beating, as Santiago explains why he is digging in the sand, one of his attackers mocks him. The attacker reveals that he, too, once had a recurring dream. The attacker dreamed of a treasure buried far away in Spain, hidden beneath the roots of a ruined church, under the exact same sycamore tree where Santiago used to sleep with his sheep before the journey began.
It is the ultimate mind-bending twist of the narrative. Santiago sacrifices everything, crosses the world, survives the desert, and risks his life, only to discover that the physical treasure was never in Egypt.
It was literally back exactly where he started.
He was sleeping on top of it the entire time.
Exactly. And this leaves us with a profound, almost unsettling question to mull over as we end.
What?
If the literal treasure is never where you expect it to be, and if it was back home the whole time, why did the universe demand the journey?
Right. Why go through all of that?
Why the robbers? Why the crystal shop? Why the desert? It demands that we reconsider the true nature of the conspiracy.
The conspiracy to help you.
Right. If the journey requires you to survive brutal external tests, face your deepest, most paralyzing ego fears, and learn an entirely new neurobiological language of awareness.
Yeah.
What if the real treasure isn't the gold under the tree? What if the real treasure isn't the 65 million books sold? What if the universe's ultimate conspiracy is simply using the pursuit of a shiny external goal as bait? To force you to endure the friction required to become the person you were always meant to be.
The external goal is just the bait. The internal transformation is the actual destination. The universe didn't want him to have the gold. The universe wanted him to become the alchemist. I want you to sit with that thought today. Look at your own massive goals, your own terrifying personal legend, and ask yourself not just what you will get when you achieve it, but who you are being forced to become in the pursuit of it. Start finding your personal legend today. Listen to your heart even when it is desperately afraid of failure, and keep your eyes open for the omens. Until next time, keep diving deep.
So, friends, those were the powerful insight that can truly transform your life. Remember, growth doesn't come from the just listening, but from applying this lesson. If you want to get 1% better every day, make sure to subscribe and follow BYK Book Summary. I am Amin, and I will see you in the next episode. with another incredible story. Until then, read more, think deeper, and live with meaning.